You're listening to the Leaping Choya podcast recorded in the Wrong Mountain Yurt in the Sonoran Desert.
I am falling away from this world. I am falling away from this world. You are calling me.
We're on section 44 of Contributions to Philosophy of the Event.
Page
By
72.
Heidegger. Sorry, what'd you say? Page 72?
Page 72.
Super. So we're reading through the book. Let's go.
44. Quote, decisions. Whether the human being wishes to remain the, quote, subject, or whether the human being grounds Dasein. Whether, along with, quote, subject, quote, animal, is to remain enduringly as, quote, substance and, quote, rationale, is to remain as, quote, culture, or whether the truth of beyng, see below, will find in Dasein a future abode. Whether beings take being as their, quote, more general, end quote, feature.
They're most general.
Whether beings take being as their, quote, most general, end quote, feature, and thereby deliver being up to, quote, ontology and thus bury it, or whether being in its uniqueness will come to words and will pervasively attune beings in their non-repeatability. Whether truth as correctness deteriorates into the certainty of representation and the security of calculation and lived experience, or whether the initially ungrounded essence of, can you look that up? Greek word, might be truth?
Truth, yeah. Greek for truth.
Greek for truth. Comes to be grounded as the clearing of the self-concealing.
Should I chat a little bit about what we've read so far?
I think so.
This section is called Decisions. So he's presenting a number of decisions that we need to make. The first one is whether the human being is going to be a subject or whether the human being is going to ground Dasein. So what's the difference?
You're asking me?
Sure.
Wait, who are you asking?
I was asking the room.
What'd you say?
I was asking the room.
Oh, the room. Okay.
The room?
The room.
I was asking the internet.
Oh.
No, I don't know what I was asking.
AI is answering.
I was actually just pausing because I don't know the difference. No, I mean, do you want to say something?
I mean, I don't really know, but I think it's interesting to think that being the subject is kind of how we are currently. Most of us are currently, but the goal in a way is not to be a subject. Also, it makes me think of like the whole object subject thing with, is that Berger? I think like the woman is the object,
Yeah.
and like the goal being to be the subject.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that he just kind of takes it out of all of that completely. Like you don't want to be the subject or the object.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good start. Yeah. I mean, subject is a laden word, going back to, the ego, cogito ergo sum, or, the transcendental subject, the metaphysically discrete, abstract self, the kind of timeless, conscious pivot, and you're right, it's part of the subject-object dichotomy. So I mean, I think he talked in the last section about this idea that like human beings view themselves as being sort of like conscious nodes in a world of just objects. So it's kind of subject versus object. So the world is kind of a dead space or a space of things, whereas the human, being a subject, has subjective experience, has an inner world. But Heidegger was coming out of a kind of Husserlian phenomenology where the transcendental self or the transcendental subject, the transcendental ego, was seen as a unique, kind of separate, in a way, a little mystical castle inside your head, that counterpoises you to the world. So you're always the subject, and the subject is kind of existing in its own time space, and then the world is around it, and the subject relates to the world. So I think probably subject here is just simply just the take on what a human being is, given the first beginning and the 3,000 years of metaphysics that Heidegger was dealing with, right? That in definition of the self or the human.
So, sorry, can you go back to the Husserl? Are you saying he's coming sort of out of that, so he's kind of opposing to that?
Yeah, that's right.
Or he's responding to that?
Yeah, that's right. Husserl was Heidegger's teacher for a long time, but a lot of Heidegger's thinking is trying to step out of Husserlian phenomenology. And
That's
Husserl,
impressive.
huh?
That's impressive to want to go outside your teacher as opposed to inside your teacher. I guess.
Yeah. It is impressive. And so whether the human being is a subject or whether the human being grounds Dasein, and I think this book is a kind of a manual for what kind of human being would ground Dasein, but it would be different than the inherited historical subject of metaphysics. Yeah?
Yeah, I have one more question.
Yeah.
Why is decisions in quotes? I'm a little confused about how he uses quotes. I mean, I think later in the book he kind of changes how he uses them, maybe. Or I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't really know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he uses quotes as shorthand for the phrase so-called. And so-called is something that we say when we're trying to say, this is what people call this thing, even though I'm not sure they understand what they mean by that word.
Right.
And I'm not sure that when I use that word,
it really means
I'm necessarily sharing in their view of what that word means. So
right.
It's scare quotes. Yeah. It's another word for it. I think it's an as if.
Yeah, but isn't decisions, but he's pro decision, so why is it in quotes?
Seems like he is, yeah. But then why does he put subject in quotes?
Yeah, I
or
know.
Animal, or rationale, or substance, or culture.
Yeah, I know. I mean, those were all on the front side. I don't know. Maybe there isn't a formula to it at this point.
Yeah, as somebody, or as whether beings take being as their most general feature.
Yeah.
Why is that in quotes? Honestly, I use quotes a lot of the same way that he does, which is, I would say, liberally. Or not in the context of this podcast, not exactly liberally, but I mean, recklessly. I've been accused by editors of using them recklessly.
Yeah.
And it's weird. I think sometimes...
It's true.
What?
It's true. I've seen you put a whole thing just in quotes, just to see if it's allowed. Remember?
No.
We don't need to get to it. There was a press release that you put the whole thing in quotes to see if it was allowed.
Yeah.
And then they by mistake published that one.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. I mean, because I think like say putting things in quotes in press release is a way to say, I, the writer of this press release, am not saying this.
Right.
Someone else said that.
Right.
And I'm just kind of relaying it. So I'm exonerating myself. I also think quotes could be here. They could be shorthand for the phrase, what people generally mean by. So, for instance, what people generally mean by decisions, whether the human being wishes to remain the what people generally mean by subject, or, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah, sure.
so, you know,
Yeah. Okay.
whether along with subject, animal is to remain enduringly as substance, and rationale is to remain as culture. Or whether the truth of beyng will find in Dasein a future abode. So along with subject, so again, the human being as subject, that our substance is to remain animal. So in a sense, that this is kind of body and mind, I would say he's drawing here. So our body is viewed as an animal thing. It has desires. It's part of nature. It's kind of something we need to control and tame. It has instincts. It has drives. It has appetites. It's seen as mammalian, and it's seen as a substance, as a enduring matter. And then opposed to that is rationale. And again, animal rationale is the ancient Greek definition of what humans are, as a rational animal. And that rationale is viewed as culture. So animal and substance are on one side, rationality and culture are on the other. And this is all tied up with the idea of a subject. A subject kind of, I would say, is a mediator between these two areas. It's a separate, transcendent pivot point between the animal substance and the rational culture, or whether the truth of beyng will find in Dasein a future abode. So, or whether my book will lead us to beyng as being the truth and the abode in Dasein. So. And then finally, whether beings take beyng as their most general feature and thereby deliver being up to ontology and thus bury it. So in a sense, beings are the things of the world, or whatever one can identify as a thing. And if the most general feature of beings is being, which thereby delivers being in terms of thinking about what beings are up to the science of ontology, and thus burying it, thus kind of, in a sense, rendering it ineffectual or dead. So that's, I would say, that again is a picture of what we've inherited from the first beginning. What is the most general feature of beings? I think what he's saying is the metaphysics has handed us the idea that the most general feature of them, the thing that they all share, the thing that most generally unites them, is that they have being. And then how do we study that being? Well, we study it through the science of ontology, but in claiming that being is the most general feature of beings and handing the science of beings over to ontology, we're in a sense evading beings. And we're destroying the very science that could inevitably grant us beings and give us an insight into beings by making the science of beings the science of being. That's, in a sense, one of the primary theses of this book. Or whether beyng in its uniqueness will come to words and will pervasively attune beings in their non-repeatability. Very interesting, right? So the repeatability of beings could, in a sense, be thought of as beings having the most general feature of
Yeah,
being.
yeah, that's right. I was just
Right?
reading that.
And so beyng in its uniqueness will come to words. So words will not anymore just be regurgitations or repetitions of a general feature of things, but they will pervasively attune. They will become attuned to beings in their non-repeatability. So words will be removed from the abstract general being ontology that renders everything the same or gives them identity, really. And instead, words will start to relate to the non-repeatability of beings. And whether truth is correctness deteriorates into the certainty of representation and the security of calculation and lived experience. So truth as correctness is not the theory of truth that Heidegger is trying to put forward. That's the old theory of truth. When something is correct, it's true, which inevitably deteriorates into representations needing to be certain and verifiable, and people kind of seeking security in calculation and lived experience as an abode of truth. That's where truth as correctness leads us. Or whether the initially ungrounded essence of truth comes to be grounded as the clearing of the self-concealing. Again, that's his definition of truth. So all very exciting decisions, and really laying it out in terms of, you want to go to the left, you want to go to the right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Whether beings as the most self-evident rigidify everything moderate, small, and average into the rationale, or whether what is most question-worthy constitutes the genuineness of beyng.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Whether beings as the most self-evident. So beings are the most self-evident thing. They're right there. So one option is that they rigidify everything into moderate, small, and everything. They rigidify everything moderate, small, and average into the rational. So in a sense, what he's saying is whether we're gonna live in a world in which beings are rigidified, sort of rendered set, fixed, rigid, rigorous, are just going to be moderate, small, and average elements of the rational, or whether what is most question-worthy constitutes the genuineness of beyng. So instead of things being moderate, small, and average and just subsumed to the rational, things will be question-worthy, and they will be constitutive of the genuineness of beyng. Go ahead.
Whether art is an arrangement of lived experience or the setting into work of truth.
Yeah. An arrangement of lived experience. I mean,
Which is like exactly what most artists these days.
art is mostly that now.
Because, and I would say the reason why is because the curatorial or the plaque on the wall is almost always based on a lived experience to give justification, kind of like scare quotes.
Yeah.
To say this is what makes it worthy is this person said this person claimed this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me more about the plaque and how the plaque is a victim or a representation of the arrangement of lived experience.
I think it's like it's like the reason that the art is of value is typically said to be because of the identity or the lived experience of the artist.
Right.
So they have a right to create art on this topic because
Right.
of their experience or
The art is
identity.
interesting.
For that reason.
The art is important because their lived experience is important because their lived experience is somehow marginalized or repressed or
Yeah.
not represented enough. Or in other words, there's a cause célèbre in their lived experience.
Yeah.
Therefore, the art is important to see.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a setting into a work of truth.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. So I don't want to, I don't want to bash on the arrangement of lived experience without understanding what an alternative might be. But it does seem that...
I think we talked about it a few episodes ago.
Yeah,
There's this big section about truth and art. I actually just listened to it. I think it's episode 32 or 3. I can't remember what. Exactly.
Yeah, do you want to...
Well, I think my guess would just be that it's art as an exploration of what truth is, the clearing and concealing versus the I don't know. I don't know how to say it. I'm sorry. I don't know how to say it.
How to say what?
What art is as the truth into the work, setting into work of truth.
Yeah, I mean, I don't either, really. I mean, I think truth is a really hard word.
Yeah.
I mean, he says the clearing of the self-concealing is what truth is. I guess it seems that maybe if lived experience justifies the work and you're to remove lived experience from the work, then you have to say that the work is representing a truth. So it's clearing the self-concealing. Mm-hmm. I guess I think that there's a sense in which if the lived experience of the artist were not to be considered in thinking about art or viewing art, like imagine a world where art was presented and we knew nothing of the lived experience of the artist.
Yeah.
Like, let's say it was just illegal to know that, like it just was, you never knew it. It was.
What's actually interesting with the outdoor art fairs, at least the few I've looked at, they say it's like a blind process. So like you're not
Right.
supposed to like put your name on it so
Right.
they can't see it, which is kind of interesting because that's like the opposite of
It's the
how
opposite.
galleries
Yeah,
work.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry.
It would seem, that's interesting. I mean, and so, I mean, that's a really interesting dichotomy because you're right. In the gallery world, in the curator world, in the art, quote unquote, art world, it's all lived experience. That's what people look for.
Currently, yeah.
And in the what you call the outdoor art fair, which is I would call, I mean that's an art world that's just basically pure capitalism, isn't it? Like let's sell art to people who want it on their walls. Mm-hmm. So as people, you were the one that always said the reason for, say, identity politics in art or the arrangement of lived experience as the justification of art was that people had failed in the task of determining what good art is.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't know how to aesthetically question and analyze work, so they fall back. And especially when you're looking at art, they'll say that it is really abstract. Like, how do you say this white square is better than that white square? Well, it's because what does the white square mean?
Yeah.
If it means, if it's painted by the right person, it means the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, and I've also said that just like with the proliferation of phones and everyone kind of becoming a photographer and net art in particular, it's like really hard for people to identify what the art is without the story behind it.
Yeah.
Or the artist saying, this is an artwork. I mean, I do this. I'm like, well, this is an artwork. You consider it as an artwork.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's almost like, that's what I was saying earlier. If imagine a world in which the lived experience of an artist was always unknown.
Yeah.
The only thing we would be able to go off of, I'm angling here for a definition of what the setting into work of truth might mean.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say you can almost get an inkling for what it would mean or what it means if you can imagine a world in which all the art you're looking at, you have no lived experience information about the artist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so then you have to ask yourself, how is this artwork, about which I have no history, no historical knowledge, no knowledge of its context, of its making, how is it engaging with the world? How is it clearing the self-concealing? How is it opening something up? How is it, in a way, enlightening the world, opening the world up, opening me to the world, engaging me? How is it getting me access to beyng? How is it appropriating me? How, it's all kind of truth. Then it becomes truth. And so in a sense, I would say the emphasis on lived experience just stands in the way of truth. And in the absence of lived experience, you would start to encounter truth is what you have to consider in the absence of the arrangement of lived experience. I guess that's what I'm saying.
That's well said, yeah.
I mean, obviously, because he's like juxtaposing them here, but I don't know. It's not a very profound statement, but that sort of feels like what it is.
Yeah.
Because if you see a work and you don't know anything about the creator, really all you can ask yourself is this work true to me? Is it true to the world? Is there truth in it? Is it clearing up something that was concealed to me? Right? And then, because now you don't have any politics, you don't have any story, you don't have any, how should we say, burden of needing to appreciate because of social norms and obligations. It's just simply how much self-concealed stuff is cleared through this work, and that would be for Heidegger truth. Okay, we've beat those 15 words to death. So that's all interesting. Go.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely keep talking about it, but this is not a podcast about art.
No, it is a podcast about art. That's all it is. This is an art podcast. Do you have something more to say? I would love to hear it.
Well, I was just going to say, I was making it a little personal, but I sometimes will use the lived experience in my work because it'll be like, well, since I'm a woman, I can make these kinds of images. Or you're trying to sell eggs to people who eat eggs, I mean, I mean, you're
if-
right. That's true. And they won't appreciate it, but it won't be analyzed based on its aesthetics.
Yeah.
Which is how I create it. But when I write about it, I have to really add the lived experience and
course you do.
justify the lived experience.
Well, that's the language of the market right now.
Yeah.
That's it. It's the language of the market.
Yeah, it was even in the. I'm working on an NFT project, and even in there, they're doing it. They're like, women are underrepresented in NFTs, and like I just like cringe when I see that. But like, just because I don't know, it doesn't feel like it. Well, it's a lived experience thing, and it feels to me like it's devaluing the work. So it's not just saying this is amazing work. It's like, well, this is amazing because. But yeah, that's eggs.
I think
to
that's
eggs.
absolutely right. I don't know where I got the eggs, selling eggs to people who eat eggs. I don't know where that came from, but
I think you've been thinking about chickens today.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, we can talk about that at the end. But
Yes.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think you put your thumb on it because I feel the same way. My lived experience is irrelevant to my art, and I hate talking about it. I hate bringing up my lived experience. I hate contextualizing my work into whatever story or identity categories I fit into. Which is why I'm a failed artist, probably. And I think it's so mandatory now, and it's such the language of marketing art, and it is so cringy to do. Most people do it happily. They skip naked and bleeding right into the machine, like no problem. They love it. I hate it. Hate it.
Yeah.
The way you do. But, if you don't do it, you're not even talking about art, because there's no talk about art other than the lived experience of art.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think that in my despisal of the lived experience of art, I kind of am holding on to the idea that art is the setting into work of truth, and that it should be thought of as that. Meaning when you look at it, that's how you should be analyzing it.
Yeah. It's a really nice. I was actually just looking at a curatorial statement that I made in 2015, and then I did like a follow-up one about how to look at Instagram models, how to basically assess them or critique them as art, ones who are like making artistic images, and it'd be and there were things in there. I can't remember anything right now because I am tired, but it was something, it talked about aesthetics. It definitely talked about aesthetics. That was like the whole point of it. And it's interesting to think about adding in that, like, and it's in a way almost, maybe it's banal to say it this way, but it's like, it's just that you look at the art and it opens, it's something's new. You see something new, or something's clear, something's concealed. I mean, is that banal or is that beautiful? You're like, because that is like a lovely thing about work that.
Yeah.
And that's truth. I mean, that's truth according to Heidegger.
That's right.
Is that you have an experience with it. It's a sort of in-time experience.
That's right.
And it opens and conceals. So you see something and then maybe you don't see it again.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Great. Keep going.
Yeah. Whether history is degraded into an armory of confirmations and precursors, or arises as a chain of strange and unscalable mountains.
Yeah. So an armory of confirmations and precursors. So whether history is basically turned into a fortress of things that are confirmed, meaning approved, verified, judged as acceptable, and precursors, meaning we know exactly what comes from what. We know where things originate. We know what their story is. We know what their history is. We've mapped history. Everything is predetermined through historical causes, blah, blah, blah. Or history arises as a chain of strange and unscalable mountains. So in other words, or history becomes a big, wild, wonderful, difficult thing to climb. Not a formulaic fortress. Yeah.
This makes me think of therapy, which we were talking about.
What?
Because I feel like confirmations and precursors, it reminds me like that
Yes.
it's like giving reasons, it's finding
Yes.
out why
Yes.
something happened, it's making sense. Like one of the things actually that my therapist said to me a while ago was like, oh, well, it's soothing for you when I say that makes sense based
Yes.
on X, Y, and Z of your history.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but maybe we'll come back to that in a bit.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Because you were going to tell me today why therapy
it's bad for you.
is bad for you.
Oh, God, yeah.
But I don't know. Are we ready?
No, I mean, yeah.
Maybe we should read a little more than. I think we're not going to forget that. There are just a
We're
few
not
more
going to forget
weathers.
that. Let's read a few. Oh, there's a few more weather. Yeah, that's right. Let's go all the way to the end of the weathers.
Okay. Whether nature is debased into an exploitable domain of calculation and organization and into an occasion for, quote, lived experience, end quote, or whether as a self-secluding earth it bears the open realm of the pictureless world.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear,
Yeah.
right?
I gotta say, I'm sorry. I don't know why these are like making me think of a lot of things. Like,
Yeah, you're very talkative this evening.
I don't know why.
No, I really like
not
it.
sure
It's
why.
it's fantastic.
But this
that
reminds
weight.
me. This reminds me of like, I've mentioned this course I did, and I was listening to a replay of it or something. That's like a course on anxiety. And the sort of teacher is like, well, what do you do that makes you feel good? And the student or the student is like, oh, going into nature makes me feel good. And it's like, I don't know why. It's annoying to me. But like the whole like going into nature as a balm that should like fix everything just makes me think of calculation and organization. It's just frustrating. I don't know. It just makes me angry or uncomfortable or something. Because I do kind of do that myself, or I kind of want to do that myself, but maybe I don't want to. Maybe I hate it. I don't know. It's just confusing.
Well, that's an old, in a sense, that's an old canard. That there's this idea of nature as this blissful, peaceful refuge, a place of calm and harmony, and then people go to it and they sit there and they think, oh, nature. But opposed to that is that nature is, what is the Tennyson line, red in tooth and claw. Nature is violent and tumultuous and chaotic and dark and bloody and vicious and dog eat dog, and full of decay and things that a lot of humans would never want to deal with, like discomfort and starvation and blistering heat and cadaverous cold. And so you and I go to nature a lot. But I think I don't go to nature for this kind of like fairy tale. I go to nature because nature is real, and nature is old, and nature is interesting, and nature is harmonious and violent. It is chaotic and it is beautiful, right? It is red in tooth and claw, but it is also rather pink and green and blue and smells nice. So it's a mixed bag. It's a big, diverse collect. It's nature. It's like everything. And so the people who I think I'm relating to what you're saying, people are like, I go to nature to feel peace.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so in other words, you're going to nature and you're only relating to a certain aspect of nature. And so you're ignoring, suppressing, and denying all the other stuff of nature because your need for peace is so predominant that you're not actually going to nature. You're going to like your need for what nature should be for you,
Right.
which means you're not really going anywhere.
Right.
Yet apparently you think you're going on this big voyage, right?
Yeah.
So that's annoying because
Yeah, it is, yeah.
it's not real. It's hypocritical. It's
Yeah.
shallow. It's
Yeah.
it's narrow-minded, and it's delusional.
Yeah.
So that makes
Totally.
sense to
That
me.
does make sense. Thanks. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Back to the earlier thing. Yeah, totally. Thanks for explaining that, because I was like, why am I so mad this person is not mad, but just like it was so
Yeah, it's you don't like
surface treatment. I don't know.
circus treatment.
Surface treatment.
Surface. Yeah, I was gonna say you don't like comfortable cliches.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. It literally felt like she was reading out of a book.
Yeah, a bad book. Yeah.
I mean, a book that I've seen read out of millions of times.
Exactly. Yeah.
As in not Heidegger.
Cliches drive you crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Whether the absence of the divine from beings celebrates its triumphs in the Christianization of culture, or whether the plight of the undecidability regarding the nearness and remoteness of the gods prepares a space of decision.
Yeah, so the absence of the divine has kind of left culture. The absence of divine from being. So beings are bereft of divine. We don't really have. Even in Heidegger's time, the world had been de-divined. Yet whether the absence of the divine from being celebrates its triumphs in the Christianization of culture. So, he's saying that. This is religious history here. So religion used to be, I think that what the phrase they use is a lot more noumenal. So God and the divine was present in everything in a way we kind of don't understand anymore. And then the world became de-divined. It became kind of reified and bereft of the godly. But yet culture became Christianized. Culture became, in a sense, the new Christianity. Beings used to be the subset of God, but now culture is just kind of the place where morality and guilt and heaven and hell and transcendence and the communal and the being forgiven and joining with the God, it's all through culture now. Or whether the plight of the undecidability regarding the nearness and remoteness of the gods prepares a space of decision. So, or right, we live in a state of undecidability regarding the nearness and remoteness of the gods. Are the gods near? Are the gods far? We don't know, and that's a plight, and that prepares a space of decision. Yeah.
Okay. Whether humans venture beyng and thereby venture going under, or whether they content themselves with beings.
Yeah, he inverts it
Yeah,
here, right?
he did.
Yeah. This book is a manual for venturing beyng and venturing going under and not being content with beings. Yeah.
Whether humans still venture a decision at all, or whether they give themselves over to the decisionlessness which our era proposes as the state of, quote, highest, quote, activity.
Yeah.
AKA other people making the decision for you.
Yes.
Giving you answers, right?
That's right.
All these decisions, let's read just like one more paragraph.
Whatever you want. This is your
just
podcast.
Because I feel like we
it.
have to conclude now.
Please.
All these decisions, apparently many and varied, converge on the one and only decision, whether beyng conclusively withdraws itself, or whether this withdrawal as refusal becomes the first truth and the other beginning of history.
Yeah. So whether beyng conclusively withdraws itself, so in other words, disappears, I guess, or whether this withdrawal as refusal becomes the first truth and the other beginning of history. So conclusively withdraws means beyng withdraws and it concludes and it's over. Or whether this withdrawal as a which is indeed a refusal to be content with beings, becomes the first truth and institutes the other beginning of history, which this book is looking to do. Yeah, I think that's clear to me.
Yeah.
If it's not clear to you, then
That makes sense.
not you, but listeners, then go back and listen to the
all
other
our
fucking 30. Excuse me. I think it's the first time I've ever used that word
I
on this
know.
podcast. Excuse me. Go back and listen to our other podcasts. I'm feeling a little snarky.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So what are we going to talk about?
So you're going to tell me why therapy is bad for you. For me. For one.
Yeah, how did that...
That came up because I was going to therapy every week, and then I decided to go to therapy every other week.
Well, how did we jump from that to therapy is bad for you?
I
remember we were having a conversation about therapy, right?
Yeah.
And
I don't remember. You remind me.
what?
Remind me. I don't remember how it came up. Oh, okay. Now I kind of remember. No, I don't remember.
I mean,
Me just saying some of it's cliche and annoying. Is that what I said? Or,
yeah.
but I like some of it. That's my conundrum, is that I feel like some of it is valuable and helpful, and then I feel like some of it's just...
Yeah, well, why
frustrating.
do you go to therapy?
I go to therapy. Oh gosh, I don't know. That's a big question. I guess I would say I go to therapy because it helps reinforce and make me feel like there's nothing wrong with me.
Okay, so I paused things so we could get a drink. We could both have a drink. And you said I have to tell people.
I know.
This is people, as if they're people. This is the first time we've ever had an actual drinky drink while podcasting.
Yeah.
So things are about to get
Crazy.
out of control. But I think, you need to open up a bit, because this all came from you really having a big crisis.
No, it actually came before that.
I thought you sat down in the living room. You were like, I don't think I'm trying to figure out whether I should do therapy
Oh yeah.
once a week or twice a week. Like, I think I'm going down.
Yeah.
I'm going down from once a week to twice a week.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That wasn't really a crisis though.
Well,
But then I did kind of like...
Meaning you weren't sure if you should make that change.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Right?
right. Yes, that's right.
And so let's not try to reconstruct the past, because it never works out. It never works out. We never remember a damn thing. So therapy. I mean, so in that conversation, I said, I think you need to at least consider that it's a feasible proposition that therapy is bad for you. Mm-hmm. Is that right? Does that sound right? Mm-hmm. And
Actually, I think you said you're going to prove that therapy is bad for me.
yeah, and then it became like, okay, now I need to prove that. And, as I thought about it over the last week or two, I can't remember how long it's been. I think the phrase that kept coming back to me is that obviously therapy is bad for you. Like, therapy is bad for you. Like, that's so obvious that it makes me kind of angry that I have to like talk about it and defend the proposition. Therapy is so clearly bad for people, and not you. Therapy is so clearly bad for people that it's hard to even figure out why. One thing I wrote in thinking about that was get a new story, get an old story for free.
Yeah.
I think therapy is sold as a process of discovery, and it's quite the opposite. I think therapy is generally a armory of confirmations and precursors, as Heidegger describes, or one could say an armory of affirmations and precursors. So
Right.
therapy is so clearly a process of telling a story about yourself. And we live in a world where the idea of getting a new story for yourself is supposed to be progress and healing. But we've never actually ever discovered whether stories are good for us or not, or having stories about ourselves. And of course, you go to therapy to work on yourself. You go to therapy to think about yourself, to talk about yourself, to reanalyze or analyze
Reinterpret.
at all, reinterpret what you are, where you've come from, who you've been with,
Reassign blame.
and who's done what to you, and et cetera, and to remember. And none of these things have any validity. As science has nothing has ever said these things are actually good for us. I think that there's a lot of therapy making people feel good, or maybe making people feel like they're making progress in understanding themselves, and that's always a bad thing.
Why?
Because I think the project of working on yourself and understanding yourself and coming to new interpretations of yourself, that process is so, how should we say, it's so futile. It bears the patina of liberation, when in fact it's just self-burial and self-obsession. People think they're getting free by coming up with a new story for themselves, but they're actually just putting themselves into a new story. People think they're free by coming up with what others have caused in them, when in fact that never has anything to do with actually bettering yourself or making anything of yourself. There are so many sort of bad assumptions that therapy runs on: assumptions of influence, assumptions of causation, assumptions of what the self is, assumptions of subjectivity, of vulnerability, of assumptions of victimization, assumptions of time. For instance, where is it proven that what happened to you one day 5 years ago is more important than what happened to you 3 seconds ago? Like, therapy is such a agenda of time importance. Like, certain things become important as influences, and other things are not important as influences, but nobody can say why certain things are important and other things aren't.
So, can I ask a question?
Yeah, go
Wait,
ahead.
no. Were you gonna?
No, I'm done. It's just all so stupid.
But okay, so that's what I guess I was gonna ask. Is like, but like sometimes it feels good. to be like, oh,
Okay, yeah, and so. Sorry, go ahead. Finish your.
I
Finish
don't know,
your thought.
just you're like, oh, that does make more sense. Like sometimes that feels good,
Yeah, and so we.
but then sometimes it doesn't feel good,
So
or
we talked
sometimes
about
it
that. So
doesn't.
we
Yeah.
talked about how therapy provides comfort.
Yeah, right.
And so when you say something feels good, so what feels good? Just, I mean, can you name something that felt good? Like what was it?
Okay, so one example from my last therapy session is my mom sent me a New Year's text that was like, Happy New Year, you made it. And I was like, my response and my therapist's response was like, huh, well, why? Did you think I wouldn't make it? And we talked about it as like a, sort of a negative cloaked in an affirmative and that it's confusing. So, like, then the sort of typical thing that's said is like, well, if it's confusing as an adult, imagine how you feel as a child. That must be really confusing. And that it's a kind of powerless statement that has a lack of agency. So, just kind of like why it's confused, like, because it hit me as sort of a weird statement that I wasn't sure what to make out of. And of course, like if my mom was here and we were talking about it, I'm sure it would just be like, whatever, it wasn't a big deal. But, when you get it by text or if you imagine being a little kid hearing that, you are like, oh, wow, that is kind of confusing. And that made, I don't know, that corroborated how I was feeling, and it felt like it shed a bit of light on confusion that I've had, in a way of kind of looking for the worst as opposed to looking for the best in things. But it's not like thinking about that really necessarily, I don't know. It felt like I guess a temporary feeling better. I'm not sure. It was like a long-term, oh, that's the answer to all my problems.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, whether history is degraded into an armory of confirmations and precursors,
Yeah.
or arises of it as a chain of strange and unscalable mountains.
Right.
So you've spent a good deal of time in therapy, trying to interpret and kind of and understand. Well, in a sense, I would say you've kind of been trying to develop the character of your parents, so that you could have a story about you and your parents that was fully fleshed out, like it made sense. And of course, you are the hero and the innocent one and the put upon one, and very typical for therapy. And so that is an armory of confirmations and precursors. It is. And I think that so what are the strange and unscalable mountains? I mean, so in the therapeutic narrativization of our life, we the assumed and the unanalyzed aspect of it all is the person who's in therapy being a subject,
Yeah.
and being subjected to things, and being and this being subjected to things it creates a perspective on oneself, a story of the human being as a subject, as an influenced upon thing, and as, in a sense, a passive thing. And this assumption. So here's why
Like
therapy.
moldable or something.
Yeah, well, here's why therapy is
impressionable.
so obviously bad for you. Because in order to do therapy, in order to engage in therapy, and to, in a sense, believe in and need therapy, you must be fully on board with a definition of the human as subject. It's the very thing that Heidegger is trying to get us away from. Like you need to embrace the idea that your place in the world, your trajectory through the time-space field has been as a subject, that you are discrete, that you are imprinted upon, that you are passive, that you are what you were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that there's a historical chain of events that are relevant and indeed mandatory and dictatorial for you. So you have a whole wide, huge sense of what you are. This is what Heidegger talks about, is what your being is. And all of that must be there for therapy to even make sense as a practice. But that human definition, that definition of what a human being is, that one must have for therapy, is utterly destructive. And it's essentially identity. So it's sameness, category, anonymity, labeling, and projection, all bound up into the idea of what you are. And then you bring that to therapy and you say, help me, fix me, read me, find me, story me, reinterpret me, make me new. And therapy says, oh, absolutely I will. At $2.50 an hour,
Yes.
I will absolutely do that for you. And it is a lie, it is corrupt, and the whole system, the whole thing, the whole self that is being analyzed is unfixable. Again, it's hey, maybe if I have an identity, I'll lose anxiety. And identity just causes more anxiety. Hey, maybe if I have this self that therapy says I need to have in order to pay it a lot of money to fix me, I can get fixed. But that's it's like you're presenting yourself as a crippled thing, saying help me to walk, but you're inherently crippled. So you're not free, you're not liberated, you're anyhow. I've gone on, and I can keep ranting, but I think that
then what's the alternative? What I mean, and also why does it feel good? It's just like a temporary
let's go back.
comfort?
That's what I want to go back to. So tell me about the feel good. Like, why do you want to be comfortable?
Right.
Like, why are you seeking peace? Why are you seeking comfort? Why are you seeking to feel good? What are you seeking in therapy?
I mean, I think, well, I'm seeking to not have intrusive thoughts.
Well, yeah, but nobody's ever presented the idea that therapy actually gets you to that goal. I mean, I think you're right. You're trying to have not intrusive thoughts, but is therapy working for that?
I mean, I don't know if it's helping or what's helping.
That's right. You don't know.
Something is helping.
But I mean, I guess I'm saying, like, is it possible that that the comfort and the feel good and the insight, I put that in scare quotes, insight that therapy offers, what evidence do you have that that's getting you to where you want to go, which is to be a thing without intrusive thoughts?
I mean, I don't know, other than they seem to be less. but I don't know if that's due to
Yeah,
therapy.
you
or
know
not.
very well that there's no science there, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Because
I
you have a
agree.
lot of things going on
Yes,
that might be
definitely.
causing that.
Definitely. And so I'm just saying, you asked why I do it, and I do it for seeking for comfort, for the eradication of, I guess it's more about the eradication of caring about intrusive thoughts.
The eradication of caring about intrusive thoughts. So does therapy help you care less about intrusive thoughts?
I mean, it says things like, you are not your thoughts, which is supposed to help.
You are not your thoughts.
Yeah.
So it gives you different intrusive thoughts? Intrusive thoughts that are apparently better for you?
Yeah, mottos that are apparently
Mottos.
better.
I like that.
Yeah, we've used that
Mottos.
phrase. Or mantras.
Mantras, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the idea, is like, how do you, and what do you do when you're uncomfortable? How do you deal with being uncomfortable?
Wait, therapy helps you understand how to deal with being uncomfortable?
It's supposed, there are strategies suggested.
Yeah, all of which is very interesting. But,
Yeah.
I mean, again, my job is to say therapy is bad for you. I mean, it all sounds very much like a program.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like strange and unscalable mountains. It doesn't sound like diving headfirst into Dasein. It doesn't sound like the plight of the undecidability of the nearness and farness of the gods.
The only thing that's like at all close to that is saying you should be okay with uncertainty, which is something I really don't like. That kind of bugs me.
What bugs you?
When my therapist says that, she's like, "Oh,
Why?
well, this is because you should be okay with you need to like, well, because like the whole like, oh, well, you can't know 100%. Like, do you know what if something bad's gonna happen? Oh, well, you can't know 100%. You have to be okay with uncertainty. Like, that annoys me. But I'm just saying that the uncertainty is the closest, I think, that she, or I think, and yeah, that she gets to like saying something strange and unscalable.
Yeah.
But maybe that's not uncertainty. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wonder. I don't know. I don't know what I wonder. I mean, you just brought up somebody we both know saying something along the lines of, I get nervous when I go into therapy because I'm afraid I'll say something my therapist doesn't like.
Yeah.
I think there are all kinds of therapy. There's definitely all kinds of therapists. And there's the therapy that, a lot of therapy is designed to keep people coming to therapy, to say things to them that make them feel good and relaxed and make them feel justified and make them feel right, make them feel comfortable. And it gives them a little bit of a sense of, oh yeah, like I was right about that, or now I see that clearly, so I can move through my week with a sense of power and intelligence and rightness. And so that all leads me to say that I think if one arrives at a point where one says, I need therapy, I want to go to therapy, therapy has something to offer me, then I guess I wonder that instinct, that desire, that compulsion to go, is the issue. And therapy is not going to let that be an issue. Therapy is going to support that drive. And it's not that that drive should just be crushed. I'm not going to therapy. It's more that the analysis of that drive and the analysis of who one is when one feels that need for comfort and that need for insight and that need for another person to guide one into a new story. The self-analysis of that desire is what needs to occur more than therapy. I think I would say therapy is a dead end. Now, a lot of people, of course, go to therapy. They say, "Oh God, therapy helped me so much," but it helped you what? I mean, in a sense, it helped you put a lot of things to rest. It helped you see a lot of things more clearly. But I just really question all the goals of therapy. Because I think having all these goals for ourselves, having all these ways we should be, having all this like, I'm here now, but I should be there then. All that stuff. All that, like, I need other insights in order to be what I want to be. Like, you just are where you are, and what you're doing is what you're doing. And needing insights and needing to educate yourself and needing to improve proves that what you are is that you're living in this kind of subject state, this kind of transcendent subject state, where you're just a project for yourself, and you're not living spontaneous, mysteriously. You're not living in strange and unscalable mountains. You're just managing yourself.
Well, if I want to understand, I don't know, even what that is, or how to, like, be open to that. Like, I think, yeah, the idea of working on myself or making time to care for myself is I mean, that's an attractive proposition because it says it's a hope of doing better, doing good.
Yeah, and I mean, I wonder if
But it doesn't always work. I mean,
sure.
but
Well, and I wonder if in this sentence, therapy is bad for you. Cigarettes are bad for you too. So is drinking. So is skydiving. So can having a temper. All kinds of things are bad for you. But yet we need to do them. And so maybe, I don't know, maybe therapy is something you need to do even though it's bad for you.
well,
Because again, a cigarette's bad for you, but it gives you comfort.
yeah.
And should we really always just be doing things that are good for us? And maybe one needs to do something that's bad for oneself the way one often needs to be, like, slapped across the face. Like, and so maybe in a way therapy is bad for you. I guess what I'm getting at is, like, have a view of therapy as we have a view of nature, or as we should have a view of nature. Therapy is good and bad for you. Therapy is dangerous. Comfort is dangerous. Getting into the room with somebody and talking with them can be dangerous. I think that the idea that therapy is going to like just improve a person, it's just going to make you better. This new story you get of yourself is just going to like really heal you and liberate you. Is a little like saying, "Oh, I go to nature to like be met to be at peace." Therapy should be weird and dangerous and scary and wild and one, you know what I mean? Like it should be a conversation. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, what I was going to say is like, well, what other things can I, or what could I do instead of going to therapy that feels like, because I think the other element that is nice is having someone else to talk to about things.
Someone other than me. Yeah, of course.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
of
like
course.
talking to you, but you're pretty busy too. You know? I mean, like,
Well, no, of course.
I
No.
guess if I would offer you $200, you might.
Well, you know, I think that, yeah.
But there is a. I'm just saying that there
500.
is.
But, you know, that reminds me of like a lot of, it reminds me of.
I don't want to prove that I should do therapy or that it is actually like smoking. I mean, I am very.
The smoking metaphor is a good one because
Yeah.
some people say that people go and like take smoking breaks because it gives them a chance to breathe.
Yeah, right.
They sit there.
Right. Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, therapy is kind of the same way.
Yeah. Well, I think the idea is
Somebody
you're
to concentrate on you
to
for an hour.
talk and to talk in a regulated space. So like in a like
Yes.
with someone else who is regulated.
And with someone who's very knowledgeable and talked to a lot of people and has a lot of insights and
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's my why I do it, because I feel like I'm like, well, for me, I'm like, well, if she says there's nothing wrong with me, then there's probably nothing wrong with me. So it's like if I can say things, you know, the worst things, and she's like, oh, whatever.
I mean, that's just like, good Lord. I mean, it sounds like somebody in the
I
13th
know,
century
I
going to the
know.
Father Confessor and
I
saying,
don't know. I feel
Father
like I'm
Confessor,
confessing. It's
am
true.
am I holy? Am I clean? Does
Yeah.
Jesus love me?
Yeah.
Yes, you are
That's right.
forgiven. Oh, thank God. Now I can go on with my day.
Yeah. No, I think I said last time in my therapy session, for the first time, I was like, I feel like I'm confessing something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And want her to say, oh, that's okay. It doesn't mean you're messed up, basically.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're depressed. Doesn't mean you're fucked up.
Yeah.
Like as an authority figure.
Sure. And I mean, transference in therapy takes all kinds of forms and has all kinds of stages,
Yeah.
which, you know, is okay. It's part of the game. Yeah, I wonder if in 100 years we'll look back at the therapy of the 20th century and say, what a religious craze it was. You know, I don't know if I have the words for it, but I think that when you say, what am I supposed to do other than talk to this person and seek the insights that I get from that session and find a new story with them. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to address the problems I have? I guess my answer would be, how are you not to? Like, how have we gotten to a point where certain activities versus other activities are seen as a more important form of re-narrativization than others? How do we know when we're being re-narrativized in the right way? Who are we to say where we should go to be restoried? Who are we to say where we should go to find comfort? Who are we to say where we should go to receive insight? Who are we to say when we are having a conversation and when we are not having a conversation? Who are we to know where we are so specifically that we think we should go somewhere specific?
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's what I would say is I think that part of it is like, yeah. I mean, I wonder if when you went down to every other week,
Yeah.
right? Did you feel a little bit lonely and a little bit lost?
Yeah.
You did.
Yeah. Well, I just didn't know if I'd made the right decision or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel you've given a part of yourself to therapy that you want to hold on to?
I don't know. I don't think so.
But it's a valued experience for you.
So it's
Or do you feel
mixed
guilty
for
that
me.
you do? Yeah, it's mixed. Yeah, tell me why it's mixed.
Sometimes I like really don't like that I'm taking the time out of my day, and I kind of get anxiety built around just that I'm doing it, and it doesn't feel like a kind of the right thing to do, and I feel a little like I'm fighting with my therapist, I guess, or like I want her to say things.
When you're not in therapy, or when you're
in therapy.
Yeah.
Like I want her to say things that she can't say, essentially.
Yeah.
Like I want her to say what this book says maybe in some other way, but she doesn't. So it feels like I feel like a little not passive aggressive. I don't know. Like I have expectations that she can't meet, which I think makes me frustrated. But then I try to like be happy with like her structure and her framework of the world and find information and find some things that can help me feel more calm.
Yeah.
So it's conflicted for me, and I guess I try to appreciate it and get something out of it, partly just because I'm doing it.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily. I don't know. I don't necessarily. I mean, I haven't really done much therapy other than the last 4 years. I think that's also something. I'm pretty new to it, but
yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to do therapy in that way. I don't want to be doing therapy because I don't want to feel like I need therapy. So I also think there's this like admission of feeling like I need therapy.
Yeah.
That is like
yeah.
Which my therapist would probably say that's actually not, that actually some people go to therapy just because they're trying to do better and figure out, how to live more.
Yeah.
But I think it's not just therapy. It's just like all the messaging everywhere. It's just like,
yeah, I was going to say,
really
I think that,
grating.
Yeah, I think we're living in a time where,
and it's hard to see anything outside of that.
Yeah, that's right. I think we're living in a time where people are saying things like, you need therapy. Mm-hmm. Or you should like,
or you need more community.
There's people who go to therapy and there's people who don't go to therapy, and the people who don't go to therapy are obviously two-dimensional, self-denying losers. Mm-hmm. It's a little like you need to go to church, right? Or you need to get you need to get into the flow, into the group. You
Yeah.
need to get into the thing. It's become an obligation. It's become a mandatory narrative. It's become proof of a liberal spirit. It's become a commitment to the liberal progressive mindset.
Oh yeah, I think I asked my therapist actually around the election. I was like, so did all of your clients vote for Biden? Like, do you have, oh wait, sorry, not Biden, Harris. I was like, do you have any conservative clients? And she said no.
Yeah.
All of her clients are liberal.
Yeah, I mean it's the after school club.
Yeah. Well, everyone I know goes to therapy as well.
Yeah, which is fine, but it's become a little bit of a, I don't know, like a litmus test. Which is fine. Everybody has their thing. Every side of the aisle has things you got to do to show you're in the group. But it's definitely an ideology. It's definitely an agenda, and it's also definitely it's a way of thinking about time and the family and the self, and insight that is very scripted.
Yeah.
Frankly. And I think ultimately what do I want to say? The great brave warriors of freedom and the great seekers of liberation and the future ones, as Heidegger says, will recognize that therapy is a program, that therapy is a formula, and ask what is beyond.
So, what do I do if I want to do anything other than listen to our podcast or listen to Heidegger that can kind of help me think about what is beyond, what is not in the literature of today? Like, because I feel like I need reminders and like, I don't know. I want to be learning more, but apparently I'm not able to just generate it in myself. Like I need to hear it or listen to it or be inspired or get feedback.
That's a beautiful question. And so let me ask you this: Does therapy do that for you?
I think it provides perhaps illusion of doing that. I don't know.
Well, no. I mean, it's okay if it does. I want you to answer honestly.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think I have felt that I have come to understand some things in different ways that feels like it's opening up some things. But I think my problem is just so much of it is really also frustrating and annoying that it's like hard for me to fully like give into it.
Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah,
which also is complicated, which I think makes it complicated because then I'm like, oh, I like parts, but I don't like parts. And that's like, I wish I could just like it, just agree with it all. Like I'd like to be engaging in something that like I agree with.
Yeah.
Completely. And that I'm really excited to hear what's said because I feel like what's said will help me see new things. Which I feel somewhat about. I mean, I feel that way about Heidegger, but it's still revealing and concealing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really good place to end. I think it's a really good question. Where can one go to have those things, to find that stuff? In a sense, how can one find, how can one's life be a piece of art that is not an arrangement of lived experience,
Yeah.
but instead is a setting into work of truth?
Yeah. Definitely.
And in a way, I think that's where I would leave my rambling comments on therapy is, I don't think you're going to find anything that is more invested in the perpetuation of the mandatory importance of the arrangement of lived experience to what it means to be alive than therapy.
Yeah.
Therapy is the propaganda machine for lived experience.
Yeah.
So it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
And you've expressed serious reservations about lived experience as the underlying reason for art, which I think might be at the root of some of your discomfort about therapy.
Yeah. That's right.
But your question is, so where can I go to find the setting into work of truth? Where can I go to have something better, broader, more awesome, less lived experience and more truth?
Yeah.
And that's a very good question. I think this book is giving us, it might not be telling us where we can go to do that, but it's telling us what some of the dynamics and the conceptual frameworks of that activity or that place might be like.
Yeah.
So it's pointing us in that direction, but there's so much work to be done. What is after therapy? I mean, and that's a really profound question.
That is a profound question.
Culturally, historically, like, where are we headed? In 50 years, will there be therapy? In 100 years, will there be therapy? I mean, if in 1500 you were to say, where will we be after Christianity? People would be like, there will never be anything after Christianity.
Right.
But there is.
Yeah.
Where will we be after therapy? And how can we today, in this podcast, start to hint and to conceive and to imagine what might be after therapy? Because I think you're wondering that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All right. Well, that was nice, right?
Yeah.
That was
yeah.
good.
Yeah, that's right.
Therapy is bad for you.
I want more answers.
Excellent. All right. Good night, everybody. Right?
Yes, yes. Good
I can
night.
turn off?
Yes.
Turning off.
Thanks for joining us for the Leaping Choya podcast. For more information, visit leapingchoya.com and be sure and follow us on socials. Until next time.